Gusto en saludarlos, estimados participantes. En principio, agradecer por su asistencia y en esta ocasión presentarles a nuestro primer ponente, el doctor Mathias Kirchmer, que es director general y co-CIO de BPMD, que es una consultora central de transformación de procesos.
Morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce you to all the audience to Mr. Mathias Kirchmer, Dr. Mathias Kirchmer, who is the CEO of the BPMD, which is a company specialized in consulting about BPM.
Sí. El doctor Kirchmer ha liderado muchas iniciativas de transformación y mejora de procesos.
Dr. Kirchner has been the leader in many initiatives about how to transform processes.
Además, ha publicado 11 libros y más de 150 artículos en el mundo BPM.
Besides, he has published around 11 books and over 150 articles in the BPM world.
Perfecto. Demos la cordial bienvenida al doctor Mathias Kirchmer con su tema Innovación a través del BPM.
Please welcome Dr. Mathias Kirchmer and to his lecture about innovation through business process management. Class, please.
Thank you, Mathias.
Thank you, Mathias.
Muchas gracias. Es un placer para mí estar aquí. Unfortunately, my Spanish is not yet good enough to do the presentation completely in Spanish, but I'm working on it. And I would like to really thank Robinson for translating here the slides. And I read through it, really very good translations. And I will use during the presentations the English and the Spanish versions of the slides so that you see also when there are nuances in the way of describing things. There is a lot when people talk about business process management, there's often the point coming up, well, BPM is something for the transactional work. It's not very good when it comes to creative topics. It can even here be an obstacle for innovation. And I really have to say this is not the case at all. And we will see in the next 30-40 minutes how business process management can really play the role of a driver of innovation and really make things happen. Oh, there's an issue. Oh, yes. And I thought to structure that discussion into three major topics. We'll first talk a bit more general about the relation of process management and innovation, and then talk about process innovation, and after that about the innovation process. And we will hear what is behind those words.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me well, or is there an issue? Okay. So if we think about innovation, we of course know that there is a difference between the invention and an innovation itself. Example is the MP3 file for music that has been invented by the Fraunhofer Institute, a German research organization, but they didn't find anybody who really brought it to market. So Apple at the end took that format and used it to sell music, to come up with a new way of selling music. So the real innovator has been Apple, because innovation is not just about inventing something, but then having an impact with this invention, and at the end making money with this invention. And business process management plays a key role in that innovation and in making really things happen. And BPM influences in innovation through two different ways. On one hand, there is what I already referred to a bit, what is often called process innovation. That means it's about inventing a new process that has a significant impact on the market. Like that Apple example I mentioned, they used that invention, came up with new processes to sell their music, and process management helps to define those processes, so make sure that the invention gets applied correctly, make things happen in practice through new innovative processes. On the other hand, innovation also helps to organize in a company how you develop innovative solutions, and if you want, helps to organize the research and development process. And through that role, business process management has basically an impact on every form of innovation in a company. If it's now a technology innovation, a new product, or of course, as discussed, the process innovation. And in this discussion, we will talk about both aspects, the process innovation and the innovation process. And that's a topic about process innovation and innovation process is especially important in our digital world now. Because if you think about digital transformation and digitalization, at the core, that is all about linking people, products together with new digital technologies, and in most of the cases based on the internet. However, the value of that digitalization is always delivered through new and enhanced processes. And the fact that here one of the major research organizations came to the conclusion that only 1% of organizations, 1%, has their processes sufficiently under control to realize the full potential, the full business potential of such digital technologies, that shows how important process management is here. And if you really want to get innovation through digital transformation, you need a business process management, because you need to come up with new and enhanced business processes. And that's also a big motivator for organizations, especially in the last years, to build a more formalized business process management organization, to build what I like to refer to as the discipline of business process management. And that is defined as the management discipline that moves strategy into people and technology-based execution. So business process management, all about making a strategy happen, executing fast and at a minimal risk. And BPM does that basically by going through the life cycle of a process, from the design, the implementation, the execution, towards the ongoing control and management of business processes, always in that context of strategy, people, and technology. And this discipline of business process management can become the innovation engine of your organization. Now let's have a look how that works a bit more in detail, and let's start looking at process innovation and also at a case example. You know, if you look at major innovations in the last 10, 15 years, then many of them are pure process innovations. When Amazon came to the market, they didn't invent the book. They just invented a new process of selling it. When Airbnb came to the market and got successful, that was not because they invented here short-term rentals, but they invented a new process to bring that to the market. And even here, more traditional brick and mortar companies like airlines had significant impacts on the market through new processes. For example, when they introduced their e-tickets. All those examples that we see on this slide are examples for process innovation. And then you may wonder, okay, that sounds good, but how specifically does the discipline of business process management help with this process innovation? And BPM in general helps bringing inventions to life, making things happen. And it especially can be very, very useful to apply creative techniques like design thinking. And design thinking is all about empathy. You think through the eyes of your stakeholders, your clients, or your suppliers. It's about transferring successful practices from one area to the other. It's about agility, getting things done quickly, if necessary, in several steps. And it's about explaining how things work through storytelling. Business process management helps to address all those points. We can look at our organization and the processes behind it through the point of view of our stakeholders, through techniques like customer stakeholder journey mapping. And the most discussed point here is the customer journey mapping, where you basically identify the touch points of your clients with your organization and define what is the current experience, how do we want to improve that experience, and then you adjust the underlying processes accordingly. But that technique does not only work for customer views, but it can be applied the same way for supplier journey maps, employee journey maps, whatever stakeholder group you have that you want to improve their experience with your organization. You can use such a integrated journey map technique, and we are now luckily in a situation that not only the methodology is well defined, but also the underlying tools like the modeling and repository tools cover that topic very well. Signavio from SAP or SAP BPI, for example, has now implemented such an integrated stakeholder planning capability, where you can start with the touch points that your stakeholders have and then link the underlying processes to that, so that you can systematically improve them. Also, the transfer of good and successful practices from one area to another is very well supported through business process management. And what is there important is this technique of using reference models. A reference model is the systematic description of a business process that reflects a good or even best practice. And in, for example, in a digitalization context, a process reference model can show how in an ideal situation, a technology like an automation platform influences a process, for example, the underwriter process in an insurance company. And then you can basically use that reference model to transfer that common successful practice of using that technology into your specific company, and with that drive and accelerate your innovation. Also, the use of agile techniques is very well supported through business process management. And the mistake I often see companies doing is that they tend to apply those agile techniques to their technology development. They define their MVPs, their minimum valuable products, and work towards that in sprints. However, they don't really think about the business process those technologies have to support. And in order to be successful in the rollout and use of those technologies and have a real business impact, and with that a real innovation, it's crucial to have the same agile approach also for your process design by coming up with different process scenarios that reflect that agile approach. And BPM, of course, is helping to make that happen. And last not least, BPM provides the context for specific process changes and innovations, for example, by breaking down the operating model of an organization into processes of different levels, and with that enables the storytelling about the innovation that helps people understand what's going on and what their role would be. So business process management has a key role for this process innovation. And to make that a bit more tangible, let's look at a case example of a biologics company. And they were in a situation that they had a huge challenge regarding compliance issues, but not compliance issues of the product itself, but compliance issues regarding the documentation that is necessary for those products. And that led to a situation that there were hundreds and thousands of product shippings that could not go out, and with that not create a revenue because of compliance issues. And as you see here, they had to move products in conference rooms. Everything was getting filled with those products with compliance issues. And in that situation, we came then up first with a high-level solution to address that situation using here modern workflow system, using document management systems. However, the challenge was to implement that would have taken months, but we needed an impact in weeks or hopefully even in days. And there, through the transparency that business process management created, we were able to identify exactly where are the key issues in our compliance-related processes, and we developed very quickly, in days, a little compliance app. So basically a way to control and guide the creation of this documentation. We described that very carefully, again, in a repository tool here. We used again the Signavio from SAP. And like that, we could clearly show how to address those points, and how in a very short time we could bring that innovation into the company, reduce over 90% of those issues, and have a significant financial impact. And to drive that execution, we saw that here people in the manufacturing area, in their labs, needs to get that information about the new process in a very simple and digestible format. So we generated out of that process repository what we referred to as process playbooks, describing exactly the steps you go through, how you fill out those documents, and that really led to that huge effect. And that was the start point in this biologics company, that they decided to move from a very traditional way of working with their processes to a real, also innovative process of process management, leveraging appropriate digital tools, as I showed that before. And they built their whole process organization on a new digital platform around modeling and process mining techniques, so providing the process insights of the ongoing processes. And this was basically the cornerstone to make that process innovation happen, that had a significant impact on the market by basically an elimination of those document-related compliance issues. Now let's have a look at the innovation process. And most companies have somehow defined how they bring new products, new services to the market. They have a research and development process in place on a high level. They look always similar as shown here in that graphic. But when it comes then to the detail, to really being fast and being reliable in that business process, companies struggle. And I remember when I worked first time with the pharmaceutical company on their R&D process already about 20 years ago. It was a big discussion whether this BPM and process management techniques really fit, because everybody said, oh, here in R&D, we need to be creative and we cannot organize things. We just have to rely on people doing their work. But if you look at it in detail, much of this R&D process was about very, very transactional work, about clinical trials, organizing them, having the paperwork in place. And only very, very small parts of the process were really steps where you need to be very creative and free. And then the role of process management is to define the right degrees of freedom, to define the process much in detail, where it's transactional and need to be very efficient, and to leave a higher degree of freedom by defining the process on a higher level of detail, where you want to encourage specific solutions and specific creativity by your people. And we also applied that's a business process management approach to the research and development process of the biologics company that I showed before. And we see here the key goals that this company had, and was interesting. It was, of course, about cycle time, but even more importantly, about predictability, that they know at the beginning of an innovation initiative, when will we be ready to bring the product to market. And in that situation, key issues were that they often develop new products, and then at the very end of the development process, they saw that there are significant challenges for the production of those products. So they had to go back and come up with new production methods, and all that delayed things significantly. And they also had big challenges in organizing how to select and prioritize ideas for new products. And to address all of that, we really had a top-down look at that innovation process, structured that into small sub-processes, as we see here in that slide, again leveraging Signavio, and then describe in detail how we are going to work to address the issues described here on that slide. And once we came up with the right ideas, if you want, the inventions, then we described very, very much in detail how those ideas get realized and how we make things happen. And that was the basis for a complete transformation of their research and development process, a major innovation with a very, very big market impact. And to keep that process on track, we put in place a new governance model that describes how here the process owner and the process organization work together, how the different tools and approaches are used on an ongoing basis, keep that process on track and come up with the next jump forwards when required. And we went there even a step further and described that innovation process and that governance around it also as a process itself, in form of governance processes that describe how we use here our analytics tools or our repository in a way that it supports the ongoing improvement and the ongoing governance of our innovation process. And with that, I'm at the end of my presentation. And I know that was a lot of content in a short time, but the key points are that BPM is very, very crucial for the systematic organization of innovation. And it makes that happen through process innovation, where BPM delivers the innovation itself, but also by organizing the innovation process, where we use the power of BPM to innovate faster and better. The right process governance helps to keep those innovative processes and our process innovation on track. And all of that is pulled together through an appropriate business process management discipline. And if you want to know more about the topic, we have lots of articles, white papers on our webpage. You can all download them for free. Also feel free to email me if you have questions. I'm always glad to come back to you and answer whatever topics you want to discuss. Thank you very much.
Muy bien. Muchas gracias, Matías, por tu excelente presentación. Por temas de tiempo, vamos a permitir solo Oye, ¿qué tal? Muchas gracias, Matías, por tu excelente exposición. Por temas de tiempo, vamos a permitir solo 2 preguntas como máximo, ¿sí? Yo les agradecería, por favor, por el chat, si pueden remitir sus preguntas.
Thanks, Matthias. Thanks, Matthias, for your excellent presentation. Since we are time boxed, we will allow only 2 questions through the chat, please.
Ok. Estimados, pueden hacer sus preguntas por chat. A ver, esperamos.
Please feel free to make your questions through the chat.
Okay. Am I supposed to read the questions, or do you read them out?
I'm going to translate them for you.
Ah, okay, perfect.
Matthias, could you explain, please, the
Oh, yeah.
relationship between BPM discipline and the concept of governance?
Ah, yeah, that's a very good question. You see, BPM, most practitioners see that as a way of improving their business processes. And many of the traditional techniques like Lean, Six Sigma, they're all focused on making improvements happen, or in our case, making innovations happen. However, many organizations then struggle to keep those improvements on track. And a few months later, they are back to their old practices. And to make sure that we sustain the benefits we have achieved and keep on moving that process forward, it's necessary that you basically adjust it on an ongoing basis. And that process governance helps to keep your processes on track. And therefore, it's necessary to organize that process governance as carefully as any other business process. And then you use BPM basically to apply it to itself. You use BPM to define a governance process and to implement it. And that is part of what I like to refer to as the process of process management. The BPM discipline is a business process by itself that needs to be managed and applied. And the governance is one of the sub-processes of the process of process management.
Es importante que los concurrentes entiendan que la relación que existe entre BPM y gobernanza es debido a que en las organizaciones se tiende a, una vez definidos los procesos que se van a innovar con el tiempo por un tema cultural, volver a los procesos antiguos. Es por esto que es importante que la gobernanza tome control de los procesos de innovación más importantes a fin de que en el tiempo esos sean sostenibles y no se pierdan, volviendo al esquema de gestión por procesos anterior. Por eso es que yo hablo del proceso de gestión.
Voy a hacer 2 preguntas más. Sí, gracias. Ya tenemos ahora varias preguntas. Perdonen que no se puedan atender todas las preguntas por temas de tiempo. Agradecer pues a Pedro, Leticia, Marlen por sus preguntas y Mauricio. Vamos a empezar con una pregunta de Leticia, de Marlen, perdón. Dice, ¿cuál considera que es el paso más importante al implementar BPM en una empresa del sector salud, por ejemplo?
The next question is, which is the main step you considered in importance when we try to implement BPM in a health service enterprise or company?
Okay, that's another very interesting question. And it's of course difficult to answer it in general, but you see, when you want to make BPM happen in such a health company or any other organization, it's important to take a step back and think about what BPM is about. And it's basically at the end about three things. It's about focus. So you need to know what are your high impact, low maturity processes that you want to focus on to make a difference. Second, it's about improving in a context. What do you do to make those high impact, low maturity processes better, and which methods and tools do you use to do that? And third, it's about sustaining those improvements. So how does your governance around your processes look like? And to set up such a process management discipline, you would address those three topics: identify where are the high impact, low maturity processes, how do we improve them, and then how do we keep the improvements on track. And and then to implement the right techniques and to implement that process of process management, we recommend not to do that in a vacuum, now spending months and months building a BPM discipline, but doing that in a context of a very specific improvement initiative. So once you have identified your first high impact, low maturity process, then you start selecting what kind of methods and tools do we need to improve that. And then you apply it to that process. And by doing that, you build the capability in your organization so that you can reuse the same approach when it comes to the next project. And then you build the governance around this first process. And then you build that model that you can again then transfer to other processes later on. So the recommendation is always to combine the building new process management capabilities and applying them right away in a specific improvement or transformation initiative.
Es una pregunta compleja, pero básicamente hay que entender qué cosa es BPM como concepto y finalmente como disciplina. Luego hay que definir los procesos que tienen el nivel de madurez más bajo. Segundo, qué herramientas se va a usar. Y tercero, hacer el seguimiento para ver que se cumpla la sostenibilidad de estos procesos que se han transformado.
Perfecto. Una última pregunta y con esto finalizamos, ¿sí? La pregunta es de Mauricio Lozano, indica formas de integración del trabajo de las áreas de innovación y de procesos para que trabajen por un objetivo en común.
Okay, the same question, Matthias, is how to integrate the innovation area and the BPM area to make the implementation successful.
Okay, so let me answer that in two steps. First,
voy a responder en dos pasos.
In a company, there exists very solid research that a company only competes through 15 to 20% of their processes, 15 to 20%. And these are the high impact processes. And only in those 15 to 20% of their high impact processes, process innovation is really relevant. That means BPM will always have a larger scope than innovation itself. So, and based on that, I have seen successful combining BPM and innovation in two ways, very much related to my presentation. On one hand, that you use BPM to have a very solid and very high performing innovation process in place, a very high performing research and development process in place, So you apply BPM to that. And second, that within your BPM organization, you have capabilities to apply some of those creative techniques, especially the stakeholder journey planning, this integrated stakeholder journey planning that helps you to come up with new ideas. Also the use of reference models and the development of reference models to transfer ideas is a good technique. So those innovation related techniques you would build up in your process management center of excellence, or however you call that organization. So the two ways: you apply it to your innovation process, and you build up capabilities about this process innovation techniques in your core organization, in your core process organization.
Okay. Básicamente hay que tener en cuenta que entre 15 a 30 procesos son los de alto impacto en una organización y hay que tener mapeados y definir el nivel de madurez que hay en estos. Me mutearon. Y el segundo paso es que hay que construir capacidades en la organización para poder hacer el despliegue de estos nuevos procesos ya transformados bajo el enfoque de la disciplina BPM. Es la única forma de poder asegurar la sostenibilidad de un proceso exitoso de BPM en una organización.
Perfecto. Listo, estimados, muy amables por su participación en esta primera ponencia de la Sala 1. Thank you very much, Mathias, for your excellent presentation on innovation and relationship with BPM. Thank you for your time. Ok, muchas gracias por su asistencia. ¿Sí? Entonces vamos a pasar a la siguiente ponencia con nuestro experto Roger Treger. Muy amables, Matías.
Thank you very much, Matthias. And I hope to see you next year in person.
Perfect. Well, you too.
Great, thank you.
Okay.